Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Carpo here, and this will be another episode or another installment of, I guess, Carpo's philosophy, if you will. Ho hum, for what it's worth. I've been making these videos for a couple years now, so, I go back and forth between my, interest in, like, philosophy and my interest in politics, lack of interest in politics, my interest in history, different ups and downs in spiritual endeavors, and understandings and realizations that I try to share with the people, subscribers. And I've had a lot of good and bad discussions, and a lot of revelations. I've had a lot of discoveries. I've had a lot of people who've helped me, and I've helped some people, they claim. So this is what we do this for, to talk about life. So today I really wanted to talk about being yourself and allowing yourself to flourish in this world. This seems like such a basic human right, to be who you want to be. It seems like something that we should just inherently know is ours. The right to make a decision on our own without worrying about anybody else telling us whether that is right or wrong. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. There are times when a person does something that is obscenely wrong in society's eyes, and many people will tell them, hey, that is wrong. But I'm not talking about, though, I'm talking about the subtle decisions, personal decisions that a person makes. And it's often a loved one, whether it be a parent telling a kid what they shouldn't do, when they're past the age of their own discovery and they've already decided who they want to be, or even choosing the kids' wives and husbands when they're well into their 20s, and the kids go along with it because they just refuse to stand up against their parents who are constantly telling them who they should be or what they should be. And likewise, there are the husbands and wives who want to, they get married and assume they'll be able to change the other person. I've heard people say this, that, well, I thought I could change them when we got married. I said, what the fuck are you thinking? Sorry, pardon my language, but you don't marry someone because you want to change them. You marry someone because you love who they are. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with every point, but the problem is society, we have this idea that people have to fit a certain way of being in order to be what you might call a normal or a suitable person. I have had friends whose wives have made them feel horrible because they don't have a regular 9-to-5 job, because there may be an artistic type person who wants to do something else, and they force themselves into doing something they don't want to do because they think it's the right thing to do. When kids are young, they're particularly susceptible. I'd say when relationships are really young and when they're really old, people are particularly susceptible to getting sucked in and just going along with the flow. And what I mean by that is when couples have been together for a really long period of time, they tend to just let things slide. They won't get a divorce. They won't make a big deal. They'll just say, screw it. We've been through it this long. Let's just, make it to the end. And that's just ludicrous. I mean, if you're not loving who you're with, if you're not enjoying who you're with, if they're telling you who to be, this happened to my son recently. He's living with us now, and his girlfriend had been messing around with somebody else, and she basically just, devastated him. The whole time they were together, she was always bombarding him and beating him down by telling him, you're irresponsible and you need to take more responsibility. And she's the one with the 3-year-old daughter that my son was taking care of while she was off at work, sacrificing his time to get to the babysitter, to do all these things out of his responsibility league, but in her eyes, it was all his fault. A smaller example would be at the party I went, my birthday party this weekend. It was my 40th and my son's 21st, and we were at the beach. And this couple showed up, this girl and a kid. They must have been, I don't know, I'd say they were probably around between 18 and 20. And they showed up, and then they were gone within a couple hours. And I didn't think anything of it until last night when my wife was like, you remember that couple that was there? What? I was like, who? Oh, yeah, that's right. What happened to them? They drove all the way out to the beach to come to the party. The kid decided he wanted to take a nitrous hit. A whip it, and we had a whipped cream can charger. And he came upstairs, and I guess he was talking to my wife, and they were all standing outside, and he was saying, oh, my girlfriend doesn't want me to do it. And my wife says, like, don't let your girlfriend tell you what to do. If you want to do it, do it. So he did. 10 minutes later, they were gone. And I guess that she had found out, got all pissed off at him, and they'd have to leave. You spend 2 hours driving to the beach so you can leave in an hour and drive 2 hours back just because of a stupid petty argument over whether a person wants to make a decision to take a nitrous hit. And I use this example because from her eyes, this is probably such a horrible thing. Taking the nitrous hit is going to kill your brain cells. It's going to destroy who you are. It's going to ruin your mind, whatever a person may have been told. And he's thinking, that's ridiculous, it's people do this all the time. But the point isn't whether there's damage or not, or whether nitrous would do damage to the person. The point is whether this guy is able to make a decision for himself. And if his girlfriend is telling him, don't do this, she's assuming that he doesn't know how to make his own decisions. And I think that this is overlooked often. That, a person's like, well, I'm just looking out for them and I don't want them to be hurt, so they beat on them and tell them what they should or shouldn't do because they think they're looking out for someone. When in fact the person's just living their life the way they want to, and it's a very harmless thing, but in the long run the person needs to make their own decision. When a parent tells a kid what to do with their life, it never works. We know this. A parent can tell a kid, don't do this, and they'll have to do it anyway, just to prove to themselves. And all of us went through that as we were growing up. Some of us were smart enough to learn lessons by, seeing your friends get DUIs and learning not to drive drunk, that kind of stuff, or even worse, killing someone or themselves. But there are certain learned things that we can observe in others. But here's where it gets interesting. When a person comes up and says, don't do this because of this, my usual question is, or if a person says you shouldn't do this, let's say, I say, well, what is your reason for by thinking this is bad or not a good thing? In other words, in every situation, is this particular thing bad? It comes down to the whole, good and evil kind of thing. And when you really think things through, let's say a person's behavior in their life is based on many of the experiences that they've had growing up, but it's also based on many misconceptions in their life, and we get stuck on these roller coasters of thinking a certain way and believing a certain thing, and it's really hard to break away. So when we see somebody who's completely different from us, it really seems easy to point the finger and say this person's a jock, this person's a stoner or a loser, and totally put a person into a box. I've had it happen to me, and when I was younger I've done it to others, and I've learned over the years to just slap myself when I think that way. Judging people is a huge part of that. Assuming a person is a certain way or a thing is a certain way. And, you meet great people when you let down your guard and don't judge. And that is really important in a relationship. If you're with somebody that's trying to tell you how to live your life, that's trying to tell you what you've done right, what you've done wrong, and what you need to do to fix yourself, some people really think they need that, and some people probably do need that. In other words, there are folks who have no direction, they really don't know what to do with their lives, but instead of finding that, they listen to someone else's point of view, they listen to what another person tells them is important, and they might miss the entire moment where their life begins to really come together. If you're working at something that somebody else wants you to do, like maybe getting a college degree because your parents want you to, or I could think of a lot of different things that we do to please people, or just because we have to. We draw the line and we have to decide how much are you going to sacrifice to make sure that you can live comfortably and that you can feed your family, let's say, if you have a family like I do, and how much are you going to give to yourself and your heart and what you truly want and your desires. And a good rounded relationship between any two people or group of people means that each person respects the other's space. If they believe a person is doing something that is wrong, they should present a reason why and do it in a way that is not condescending or hurtful. In other words, if a husband is just comes up and confronts his wife about spending too much on clothes, but he's just really rude about it. He's like, wasting money on all that garbage, and yada, yada, yada. it's much less effective than, understanding that the woman, let's say, is dressing up in these clothes to feel good about herself because maybe she has a lower self-esteem because the person is always telling them that they're ugly or they're fat, or there are these cycles. There are reasons why people do things. Maybe that wasn't the best example because everybody likes to dress nice, but often, the wives will batter the husbands the same way about wanting to get them a career, and you need to get a 401k, and you need to get on board with life. And here we are as these entities, these conscious beings, and we don't stop to ask ourselves, what do we really want? I mean, so many people point the finger at others. So many people tell each other how to live. I mean, I see these folks on these, whether it be a TV program or a YouTube video or just in daily life, that are just like, these people are like this, and I can't believe, and I don't know how a person can live like this and live like this, and I don't understand how a person can live like this, and the rich criticize the poor, and the poor criticize the rich, and they could both live on either end of the spectrum. It's like, for example, the person with the dirty house and the guy with the clean house. I might make fun of somebody for being too anal about being clean. They might make fun of me or give me shit for not picking up my every single thing that falls on the floor. There's no right or wrong way to live or to have your house or to live your life. Examples like that are just, I guess that's the best I've got for now, because they are little things that we usually point the finger at. The big things are the things that matter. If a person is a molester, yeah, you're going to call them out on it, and it's something that's frowned upon in society. If a person is, a wife beater, yeah, that's obviously wrong. There's no justification for that. There's no justification for verbal or physical abuse or any type of holding another person back. And that's, I think, once we remember that, are we holding another person back from being themselves? In other words, are we hindering or helping this world? So, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts for the day. So I'm going to part ways, and I got to get to the post office. So I'll talk to you all soon.